China's three-day New Year holiday has ended with promising signals. According to the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, China recorded roughly 53 million domestic tourist visits during the period. That's up 0.4% year on year. And the tourism revenue generated reached over 26.5 billion yuan, or some $3.8 billion US. That is up 4% from the same period last year. Also, data from Trip.com, the travel company, showed that the number of orders for outbound flight tickets during the New Year holiday soared by almost 150% year on year. What do these numbers tell us? Is the Chinese economy back on track? And with the IMF presenting quite a gloomy outlook for China in 2023, how can China defy expectations? Welcome to a special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin, an opinion show coming to you from Beijing. I'm pleased to be joined on the line by Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of the New Development Bank, Mr. Leslie Maasdorp. He's joining us from Cape Town, South Africa, where he's spending his Spring Festival and New Year holiday. So, Mr. Maasdorp, thank you very much for joining us. And a little bit about the bank. Of course, it was officially opened in 2015. It's headquartered in Shanghai. It was opened by BRICS countries to strengthen cooperation among BRICS and, of course, other emerging economies to supplement efforts by other multilateral and regional financial institutions to boost global development. So based on the numbers that we have seen and the kind of rush into shopping malls, into scenic spots, into tourist destinations, what are the signs you are feeling about the economic activity in the coming quarter, even first half of 2023?
I think in general, there's been a consensus, emerging consensus amongst international financial institutions, also the IMF and the World Bank, that the growth numbers for 2023 will be adjusted upwards. I've just noticed in the last 10 days or so that Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Nomura, all of these institutions have increased the projected growth for 2023 from around 4.8 to 5.4, some even go as high as 5.6 and so on. So there will be a return to more robust growth in 2023. This will be driven by a number of factors, but the most important lever is for the government to find measures to stimulate business and consumer confidence again. There is a belief that there will be a rebound in consumer confidence because of the pent-up demand from 2022. However, it is important to highlight the road will be bumpy. There will still be a strain on the public healthcare system. There will be increased hospitalization as we work through the pandemic. But overall, the direction of travel is very positive because the economic momentum will return from the second quarter and certainly the rest of the year. So in many ways, people see two halves. First half, weaker growth, and second half, much more robust economic vitality returning.
Yeah, if I may follow up there, because you mentioned the economic momentum will return. What makes you say that? What do you observe as to the fundamentals of the Chinese economy that gives you this kind of cautious optimism?
I think a number of variables. As you know, Chinese economic engine has been investment over the last couple of decades. That has shifted over the last number of years towards consumption. Domestic consumption has become a big driver of the Chinese economy. So that shift from investment towards consumption is a long-term trend. There's also a shift away from, for example, manufacturing, which is still very core to the Chinese economy, towards more services. So this direction of travel continues. It is not something that will change overnight because of the current crisis. And then thirdly, the demand in the rest of the world is important to focus on. China, as you know, is central to global supply chain, to the production of just about everything. China manufactures just about everything from Tesla to iPhone. Things are produced in China for Europe, for the United States, and for the rest of the world. That demand is returning as most of the world is also coming out of the COVID pandemic.
You're not worried about fragmentation, as some people are saying, you know, the supply chain disruptions that are more and more driven by some people in the United States, and also the global demand for exports from China also slumped
There will be a continuing weakening in foreign demand. There's expectations of a recession in Europe, much probably more milder, not as deep as what would have been anticipated before, but a mild recession will also impact on China in some kind of negative fashion. The most important thing to highlight is that coming out of COVID is going to be a breath of fresh air and an infusion of new confidence in the domestic economy.
How big of a concern is consumer confidence in your eyes? Because right out of the 3 years of dynamic zero COVID policy, a lot of people are simply not spending money. Of course, right now we're seeing hopefully the beginning of revenge spending. I would like to put it this way, but how much time is it going to take for people to be really comfortable and confident in spending again? Is that a big concern to you?
I think we can only draw experience from the rest of the world. During 2020 and 2021, when China had a very different strategy and managed to, I think, perform much better than the rest of the world in terms of containing the pandemic. If you looked at what happened in Europe, in the US, and elsewhere, it was very swift. It was literally from one day to the next, there was a recalibration of people's approach to spending again, people traveling again. So I think we might see the same much sharper sort of rebound in consumer spending, people traveling again, people spending money.
Leslie, right now we don't know the number for the year 2022, and given the performance of the last quarter of this year, it's going to be it's not going to be a very nice picture. So 5.5, although nominally it looks okay, but it's actually compared to a rather low basis, isn't it? I mean, is 5.5, even if we reach that goal in 2023, is that good enough?
Now it's a question of recovery. It's about a slower recovery, but it's important, I think, also to make reference to the fact that for China, it's also about the quality of growth. It's not just the nominal growth that matters. It's very important that growth focuses on dealing with the structural issues that the Chinese economy is facing, dealing with the rural-urban divide, dealing with the rising social inequality, improving the competitiveness in the economy, deepening market reforms and strengthening the role of the private sector, reforming state-owned enterprises, all of those things, which is part of the 2021-2025 five-year plan. All of those things will take time to implement. I think the important thing is to focus on the quality aspects of growth, especially the inclusive part and the focus on sustainability. As you might know, China has made commitments to reach net zero in terms of its green path by 2050.
Let's focus a little bit on the bank, of course. As I mentioned in the beginning of the program, this is to supplement the multilateral, international, or other regional financial institutions in their efforts to boost global development. It was started by 5 BRICS countries. Later on, it took on Bangladesh and the UAE last year. And we have 2 more members, which are prospective members, Egypt and Uruguay. So looking back at the last 5 to 6 years of operation, what kind of a journey has it been in terms of both the quantity of projects that the bank has helped funded and the quality of the projects that you have? Has it been a steady rise that is to the expectations of the founders?
The New Development Bank has gone through an exciting journey. In 2015, we were a mere startup, as you have just highlighted, backed up by very strong capitalization from our 5 BRICS founding member countries. Since then, we have experienced not just growth, but exponential growth. The bank went from 0 to an approved project list today of $33 billion, a zero start to $33 billion of approved projects. These projects are spread throughout China, Brazil, Russia, India, and South Africa. I think the important point to highlight is that the bank has now reached what I would call more of a steady state, if you like, meaning it will not be exponential growth is what we have seen before, but we are now focused, I think, on 3 or maybe 4 key priorities. The first one is to expand the bank. It was always the ambition to create a global institution, not just 5 BRICS countries, to create a more emerging markets focused institution. So you're going to see a bigger focus on expanding, bringing in more countries during 2023 and beyond. The second big focus is to deepen our focus on climate and to invest more in sustainability. Improving the lives of people today is really about reducing pollution in the air. It's about, getting rid of coal-fired power stations and having more renewable energy. In China alone, for example, we have large solar projects. We have offshore wind projects in the Fujian province. We are looking at the energy efficiency and improving the lives of people through greater focus on climate change. The third area is also focusing more on financing our activities in local currency. In China, for example, we finance half of all of our activities in renminbi. The advantage of that is that we do not have the exchange rate risk, because if countries borrow in US dollars, if your currency depreciates, you have to pay back substantially more in interest payments.
So what is the point? Yeah, people would ask, what is the point of having a new development bank, a regional group or multilateral financial institution, when you have the IMF, when you have Chinese development banks, of course, when you have the AIIB? What kind of relationship, what kind of difference is the new development bank making?
I think 3 things. The first one is that we are much more focused on emerging markets. All of the institutions, or many of the institutions you've just mentioned, are global in character, with the exception of obviously China Development Bank, which is much more focused on China with some international activities. We're focused on the particular needs of emerging markets. Emerging markets constitute the biggest growth engines of the world today, where there's the biggest requirement for additional financial resources. We work in a complementary fashion with the World Bank, with the Africa Development Bank, with Asia Development Bank. We are not trying to replace or to compete with. There's a massive demand for new financial resources for development, for new investment in education, in healthcare, and so on. So we were started to amplify and to bring the emerging markets, to give them greater focus and priority.
Well, BRICS economy definitely very important. 40% of the global population, 16 to 18% of global trade, and a quarter of global GDP. That's roughly the importance of BRICS countries. Now, again, coming back to the economic situation we're talking about, looking ahead for the year 2023, what kind of impact will global economic uncertainty have on the BRICS economies, and as a result on your operations, if there is a link at all?
I think it's important to mention that, infrastructure, which is what we invest in, we finance infrastructure. We build ports and rail and power and infrastructure that is part of the productive base of an economy. And that happens whether the economy goes through cycles of, boom, bust. We are in a much more challenging global environment. There's also geopolitical tensions globally. There is a crisis around energy insecurity, food insecurity globally that is affecting all of our emerging markets. In many ways, it validates the importance of the new development bank and development banks in general, because there's more requirement for the kind of investments that we make.
Thank you very much, Leslie Maasdorp, Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of the New Development Bank, joining me from Cape Town, South Africa.